this morning I took myself off to Macclesfield Library, where I had my first event at the library in 8 years. Some people might say to me, Charlie, why has it taken 8 years for you to get a event at your local library? And I would not like to go into the logistics of that, but basically a global pandemic happened, and then the Queen died on the day that I released Royally Doris. And I think I have done stuff for National Poetry Day and that sort of thing whilst I've been there, or World Poetry Day, but I've just not done anything for my books. Maybe? It's been a while. Anyway, there was about a dozen people there, which is a lot more than I had anticipated, which was nice. And I was reading from Mistakes Mean Murder, answering questions and chatting about the book. Somebody told me afterwards they thought I'd got a good balance there, and I thought, well, that's a good thing, because I have been doing the same set at most of the libraries I go to. Many years ago, I used to change it for every single library that I visited, and it was only by chance that somebody said to me, why do you do that? Because you might have read it before and felt like you're doing the same bit over again, but these people haven't heard that, so why won't you always stick to doing what you know works? And from then on, I have worked on putting together an actual talk that discusses the book, discusses the history of the book, how this book differs from An Heir to Murder and that sort of thing. And I just really enjoyed it today. I am really enjoying the whole process of going around and discussing Mistakes Mean Murder, because for the most part it has been just delightful. I didn't know that this was going to be the book that saw me getting more events. I didn't know that this was going to be my most successful book in a decade, especially since I have struggled so much with it. So when these things happen, I am suitably happy, but also incredibly surprised, because I regularly think it could have gone in the other direction entirely, and I could have been left with a whole host of books under my bed again. And then I'm reading Crampton, Hodnet, finally, by Barbara Pym. I've been talking about this book since September. I have been meaning to read more Barbara Pym this year. I wanted to read everything she ever wrote this year, and I've only just picked this book up. I should by now be picking up the final one from my shelves and then buying more, but that hasn't happened. But I'm reading it now, and I'm just going to have to accept that it's taken time, but we're there, we're reading it. And I'm finding it humorous. I'm really enjoying the characters that she has created here, and I like the nostalgia that I feel when I read it, as I liked with the previous Barbara Pyms that I have read. For now, I'm going to go, I'm going to make a drink, and I'm going to decide if me and Sal are walking. It's a nice day, but that doesn't mean we can't just sit in the garden and enjoy ourselves there. It's Wednesday. The hair is remarkably flat today. Weirdly, it didn't look like this when I left, but maybe it got squashed. I don't know. Anyway, it does need cutting. So I'm feeling sorry for Barbara Pym, because I started reading her book, Crampton Hodnet, about a month ago. Only read a chapter, but then put it aside for other things. Went back to it at the start of this week with the intention of it being the first book I read this week. However, when I was at the library on Monday, I saw that they had a copy of Murder at Gulls Nest by Jess, and this is one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I'm a big fan of Jess. I still haven't read The Night Ship. I don't know whether that's going to be something that I enjoy, but I do generally enjoy this author's work. Had I not been stupid yesterday and become so obsessed with chess, then I would have finished this book yesterday. As it stands, I'm only 100 pages in. Well, I think it's 109, but still. So my plan is to read some of this before my volunteers get here. I think I've only got one volunteer today. Before my volunteer gets here, I'm going to read some more of this. It's Jess Kidd's take on a murder mystery, but what I particularly enjoy about this book is that it's not that it's got a timeless quality, because it hasn't, but the author hasn't told you what year it is, at least not yet. However, due to the context clues and the cultural references that are being made, you're kind of able to guess when it might be. And I particularly like that it's just told in the present without without this spoon feeding aspect. Really enjoying this, and as I'm reading it, I'm already wanting to go out and get a copy, because my whole thing at the moment is rereading the books I enjoy. I didn't reread Emotionally Weird again, but I do think that I might be rereading some more books sooner rather than later. I've got a hankering for Miss Marple because of Murder at Gulls Nest. Indeed, I nearly started listening to the June Whitfield radio plays again. However, I didn't do that for a very specific reason. If I do that, then I will want to write the next cozy crime novel, and as much as I need to do that, I also need to get the charity shop book written, and that was what I was supposed to do throughout the month of April. We are now 9 days into April, and I have not written 9,000 words, which was the hope, so I need to get on that, and I'm hoping to do that with my Thursday and my Friday, get some writing done, unless I really fall into the trap of Jess Kidd, in which case I'll probably read a lot of Jess Kidd. But maybe we'll work on a balance thing, maybe one day we'll actually come up with some sort of balance here. I am gonna drink my coffee, read some Jess Kidd, and I will probably speak to you either Thursday or Friday or Saturday. At some point in future, you'll see me. This is Charlie from the future, having realised that I never gave any final thoughts on Murder at Gulls Nest by Jess Kidd. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I believe it is the first in the Nora Breen series, which are cozy crime novels, all going to be set in this coastal town. I think it is in the 1950s or the early 60s at the very least. I thoroughly enjoyed the characters within this book and the way that Jess Kidd crafted them. Another aspect that I have enjoyed is seeing that Nora Breen isn't the conventional nun, but she is almost like a classic detective character immediately. If you like the Sister Boniface mysteries, then I think you'll like this. There are some more grim moments in this, nothing too graphic, but Nora has a bit of a history, as do most sleuths nowadays. It very much reminded me of how when they made the new Miss Marple series with Geraldine McEwen, they gave her a bit of backstory that we hadn't had from the books by Agatha Christie. It was a great mystery, and while I thought that the book was going to go the way that it did, I was still surprised enough by the journey and didn't really know how we were going to get there. There were certain things occurring that made it feel stylistic of the genre and like something that I'd seen before. But again, it was one of those things where even though I could tell what's going to happen, the writing is intriguing enough and it's written in such a fashion that the journey is really what the reader is coming along for. I like the way that this book sets up future books. I look forward to reading more from this character and hope that we actually do get to read more from this character. I really enjoyed this one. I thought great characters, great characterization, great storytelling, and a classic piece of detective fiction, well, sleuth fiction, you know. Not necessarily modern day Ms. Marvel, but certainly of that ilk. Anyway, I will now send you back in time to a Charlie who isn't reading and I believe is just about to tell you about some TV show he's been watching. I've been watching Alma's Not Normal on BBC iPlayer, so I think that was the night I watched an hour and a half of it to finish the first series, and then I've watched the first 2 episodes of the second series. It's a show that I'm particularly enjoying, but it's also a difficult one because I can see where the writer might have been inspired by Victoria Wood. Indeed, one of the reasons I watched it is because somebody described it as Fleabag meets such and such with a touch of PTK's Phoenix Nights meets Fleabag with a touch of Victoria Wood, and I definitely understand that and I can see that. I'm enjoying it. I see a lot of like parallels between this series and Dinner Ladies in terms of Alma's life and Bren's life, and that's been nice for me. It feels almost like Alma's Not Normal is exploring things in a more deeper sense and not being afraid to look at the darkness which Dinner Ladies only touched upon. It's been nice to have watched that and see a new show, because I always talk about wanting to watch things and then never doing it. I intended to use the 2 hours that I'd usually spend at the writers group on writing each week, but I haven't done that. Instead, I've been taking myself off on adventures with Sal, and then yesterday's adventure was the one where we do a significant loop around Macclesfield Forest, and I was walking it, I thought, somewhat quicker. It still took me an hour and a half.
Well, it's now Monday. It's a few days since last we spoke, and I managed to finally get my hair cut so I no longer have that huge mane that was slowly beginning to irritate me. As we know, I have a fear of the hairdressers anyway, but I was looking into the shops around Macclesfield last week and seeing how much things were, and one person has a subscription service of £700 a year to get 2 haircuts a month, and I was not about to start anything like that. So I've searched high and low throughout my house and found the hair clippers we have, handed them to my mother and just let her set about things. Last night I realised that I could get Crampton Hodnet finished by midnight because I had 140 pages left and I read 2 pages a minute. And I wanted to get this finished because I unfortunately have not enjoyed this Barbara Pym as much as I had hoped. Now, there's every chance that I just wasn't in the mood for Barbara Pym and was trying to get this read because one of my goals this year was to read Barbara Pym, and at the end of March I realised that I hadn't read any yet this year and we're a quarter of the way through. However, I found myself getting confused a lot with this book and mixing up the characters regularly, and I couldn't keep track of them. Other readers might be able to, maybe it's just me, but it was the fact that we had 2 parallel storylines going on that were rather similar to one another, both of them dealing with loves that shouldn't be happening. So we have the vicar falling in love with this miss at the house he's gone to stay at, and then you had the other story of Mr. Cleveland and Oxford Don, who has begun an emotional affair with Barbara Bird, and as the book progresses you begin to wonder, is it going to turn into something more? But with those 2 storylines running parallel to one another, as well as having all of these bits where people were chatting with one another and trying to remember who is Mrs. this and Mrs. that and Lady this. It was just too confusing for me. And I mentioned when I read Anne Cleeve's first novel about how in the middle of a chapter you would have been following one character for ages and then you'd move on to the next without any line break or any idea that that part of the story had finished. It just felt like Barbara Pym might have got fed up writing about that character. It's like, well, meanwhile, this is going on at this place, which is fine. And maybe I was inattentive, I don't know, but oftentimes I'd find myself going back and reading a few pages to like figure out where I was within this story and what was going on and who the characters were. And there was so much of having to remember, okay, so this is this character. I was relying on her readers to remember who everybody was. Maybe she was relying on her readers to go back and reread this book and over time get used to who all these different characters were. I mean, we have Emotionally Weird, which I regularly talk about, by Kate Atkinson, which is perhaps my favourite book at the moment. And in that you have this whole cast of characters and regularly get confused as to who's who. But that is also one of the general conceits of the book, is that Kate Atkinson is like messing around with fiction in that and poking fun at literature. So it almost doesn't feel the same way when Barbara Pym's doing it, because it just feels like there are too many characters and some of them might not have been necessary. Indeed, some of them were just carbon copies of one another, and I think that she would have done better to have cut quite a few of them. But then maybe she did want to give off this whole idea that this story was a character piece. I don't know. I have yet to read the introduction of this in case it spoiled it, but I will go back and do so later on today. I don't yet know whether Barbara Pym is going to be the author whose works I go through in their entirety this year. It had been the plan and she was the author, but considering we're now in April and I've only read one, maybe I need to find somebody else to read all of their works. I started reading The Persians by Sanam Mahloudji, and I don't know how I'm feeling about this book. So in the beginning of this book, one of the women within this family, there is a long dynasty of this family that all descend from this great warrior, as he's described at the beginning. And it's almost like everybody's living in his shadow, but in this book we are following the women from that family. And in the beginning of this book, Shirin has been arrested, and that part is told from the perspective of her niece, and then we go into the lives of the different women within this family who have fled Iran and some of those who have remained there since the revolution. And it is an interesting look at the lives of these women. Part of me in the beginning thought, am I going to be annoyed at this book? Because generally I've not liked books about rich people having rich people problems, but here we have rich people who, while they have the money, they are still looked down upon by, here in particular, the Western world, America, because of where they've come from and how they are viewed and how their part of the world is viewed, and how it's not something that necessarily people get educated about while they have one very specific, like almost tunnel vision view of that part of the world. Whenever you do a creative writing course and you're going to write about a specific part of history or reference history specifically, something like World War II or the Twin Towers or anything like that, you're regularly told to write about the regular people and how it affected their lives, because that's going to be what the reader will be able to connect with more. And that is something that the author has done here. I like that we have multifaceted characters within the book, and I generally like the prose, but sometimes I do wonder whether there's much happening, and then part of me thinks, well, does anything need to be happening if we're enjoying learning about these characters? I'm conflicted about this book because I'm only 160 pages in. I've read 80 pages each day so far that I've read it, and I plan to read another 80 tonight and then maybe try and finish it tomorrow. I also brought my notebooks with me to do a little bit of writing. Don't know whether I'll get any done. The universe is behaving in an odd way today. I decided that since there's a load of roadworks near me and it takes a lot longer to get to the forest at the moment, and also the kids are off school, so even though it's quite nice and sunny out there, it means that there are a lot of people in the forest on the towpath, and I just thought today I want a nice relaxed day with fewer people than normal. And so I thought, I'll just go to the park. It's a nice half-hour to three-quarters of an hour walk from my house, round the park, getting some grass for sale, come home. Got around the corner, and there's this young boy, I'm thinking maybe about 10 or 11, struggling with a motorbike. And I can see that the rear tyre is completely horizontal, as though it's being twisted off. And I'm just trying to avoid the situation entirely when he calls and asks me for help. Now, I did not want to help him. I even said it would be too much of a struggle. I've got the dog. And he goes, why? I'm like, well, this could be interesting. So let's lean in. Let's find out what's going on here. And so I'm asking him these questions. And apparently he swapped this bike for a PC in Wythenshawe yesterday. We're in Macclesfield. Wythenshawe's about an hour away. So I've no idea how he got there or how he got this bike back to Macclesfield. But he tells me he's going to take it to his cousin who lives on a nearby road so his cousin can fix it. And I said, well, I'm helping you to the top of this hill and then I'm going to the park. So I said, you'll be all right. You're mostly downhill. He did stop at one point and was breathing heavily and said to me, I'm sorry, I'm an asthmatic. And I said to him, oh, same. Thought, well, you know, sometimes maybe the universe was trying to tell me something. Maybe it was trying to make me feel all nostalgic for my youth. But I never swapped a bike for a PC. That was more likely me brother's type of thing. Any one of me brothers, really. Yeah. The only thing I ever swapped was Pokemon cards, and even then most of mine got nicked, so we don't talk about that anymore. I did consider saying to him, you know, I'm arthritic. It's doing my arm. It's not doing my arm any favours, it's carrying this motorbike for you. I don't think it was a motorbike anyway. It certainly wasn't a bicycle and was certainly some sort of electrical thing, and I don't know whether it was illegal for him to have it. But that's none of my business. Still, it's a nice day. Don't know what the universe were trying to tell me with that one, but there you go.
And now, the end is near. I am choosing to rest my hair today, given that it is Easter Monday, but it's already annoying me with not feeling like I can't do anything with it. But on Saturday, I finished reading The Persians, and unfortunately, I did not care for this book as much as I had hoped. When I first heard about this book, I thought that Charlie and I would rather enjoy it because we've always enjoyed a family saga. But I think that this book made that mistake that a lot of debut novels do, which is throw a lot in, have all these big ideas and not really discuss them in any depth because they just want to make sure that they're all covered within the one book. One through line through this book that I liked was basically each chapter we follow a different person from this family who are all descended from the great leader, who you realise the family, depending on which side they fall, had a different opinion of this great leader. And we have some members of the family who escaped the revolution in Iran and managed to get to America, and then we have a couple of characters who remained in Iran and have had to deal with the fallout of that revolution and the way that it has been taken over and the way that their lives differ. And I think that it was interesting to see those two sides communicating with one another, and perhaps the animosity that they felt towards one another whilst also feeling love. I think that the author managed to capture the complexities of love within a family and how different cultures create different relationships and foster different relationships between family members. And I think that that aspect was done well as well. For me, it was more the ideas that were coming into the story that I don't feel were fully explored. I do think that there is a lot of subtlety in this book at times. Sometimes it does err on the side of bashing people over the head, but not as terribly as other books have done in the past. And I think that that's one of the elements of craft that the authors pulled through from their short story writing, is the ability to be subtle, is not to be bashing the reader over the head. The characters frustrated me, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that the characters frustrating me also makes me recognise where I am as a reader and my own personal opinions as a reader, you know, thinking about the characters' actions as though these characters were actual real life living human beings. And I think that it said a lot about wealth and inherited wealth and how this might be viewed by more working class people. So there is a lot of good in here. I think I would have had a better opinion if the ideas had been explored more. As it stands, it feels like the book is only just beginning to examine all of these themes and ideas that the author has brought up before it ultimately ends. It doesn't feel like the book actually goes anywhere or does anything. It's more, we see a bit of the history of the family and we get to see the family navigating their relationships, but we never, well, I felt like I didn't get any real sense of conclusion and any sense of where the story was going to go once the book was closed. And I think maybe that comes from the whole idea within short story writing of start late, finish early, but I don't feel like this book started at all, if that makes any sort of sense. It just, a lot of stuff happened, but it felt like a lot of nothing happened. While we got to see these stories about the lives of these people, it just felt like backstory. And it felt like we were getting shown the history of these characters and maybe the pencil portraits that the writer had put together, but we didn't actually get the story with them together doing anything. I imagine other people might have different opinions from me, and that's perfectly okay. If they enjoyed it, more power to them. I did not. I am going to disappear now. I am going to go downstairs and I am going to make myself a cup of tea. This vlog has taken a while to come together. I've been recording clips for vlogs for over a month, but then just not doing anything with them. So I'm putting everything in here and just hoping that it's been a catch up. You've got to see what's been going on in the life of Charlie, and we'll just reset and come back and see how things are going on in the future. But I hope that you got something out of this video, even if it was just something to get you through a rainy day, because until next time, that is all.